Hey, y'all, welcome back to Healing Overflow. This is Dr. Toy. Thank you so much for joining me again. Y'all becoming a regular around here, and I so appreciate it. Let me get this business out the way first because I'm always forgetting. But like us on Facebook, Healing Overflow. Also, email me at drtoyjones@gmail.com for any questions, comments, feedback, and suggestions. Also, follow me on Twitter, Prof. Toya Jones, and like our WXCN radio page. Shout out to WXCN. All right, got that all out the way. Listen, today is exciting for me, because I really just been thinking about some things that I want to share with y'all, and I wanted to pull in an expert that is out there in the community doing the work. And so, before I bring them in, I just want to just say a little spiel, y'all. I want to talk a little bit about this never-ending run-on sentence we are calling a pandemic. As soon as we think this thing is over, next thing you know, we got to put the mask back on. I mean, I was one of those ones when they said, you don't have to wear a mask. And I took it off and flung it across the room. And then 3 weeks later, I was putting that doggone thing back on. And I thought, it wasn't funny at the moment. Like, I'm laughing about it right now, but that stuff ain't funny. It's like, when is this doggone pandemic going to go away? So I started to think, I was like, is this pandemic leaving a trail of trauma? And I have to say, I do believe it is. I worked in trauma for over 20 years. My guest that's coming up real soon has worked in trauma many, many years. And I'm wondering, what does he have to say about this? Okay, but before I introduce him, let me say my spiel. So I know that this pandemic is causing extra problems for those with pre-existing diagnosis, like any type of mental health diagnosis. So we're talking about like anxiety, depression, disruptive behavior, suicidal ideations. It's causing more symptoms, but it's also impacting folks that never had any kind of diagnosis. And so sleep problems and anxiety, irritability, all that stuff is coming up, when a lot of times it's like, I never had these issues before, or I'm noticing that I am like on the edge, or I'm about to jump on somebody, that kind of feeling. It's all stirred up from this never-ending pandemic. And so, what do we do about this? And how is it affecting, us as adults, or, grown folk? How is it affecting us? But how is it affecting our community, especially our marginalized communities? So I said, let me pull in one of my friends that I know is out there in those streets doing that work, and really just pull them in and ask them, like, what do you see and what are some solutions that we could follow? Watch the video to the end, and I'm going to share Toy's 10 tips on surviving through the pandemic with your brain still intact. I will also post it on the Healing Overflow Facebook page. So please go to the Healing Overflow Facebook page, share, like, all that good stuff. Let me introduce my guest, y'all. This is the Darnell Drewery. I'm going to read a little bit of his very impressive bio and then bring him in. So Darnell Drewery has almost 20 years of experience working as a community specialist, crime prevention education specialist, and an advocate for individuals impacted by trauma triggered by violence and crime. Darnell conducts workshops on conflict resolution, trauma response, anger management, and crisis intervention at the Center for Victims, where he's a senior community intervention specialist. He has strong commitment to developing healthy communities and young people. Through his passion for the youth, and along with his wife, Orlana Darkins Drewery, shout out to Lana, they created an annual awards celebration called the Shine Awards. This award celebration highlights the positive achievements of young adults in the southwestern region of Pennsylvania and throughout all the cities in all the 50 states. Read the rest of his very impressive bio on Healing Overflow, and I am going to bring him on. Please put your hands together, your virtual hands together for my guest, Darnell Drewery. What's up?
Hey, Dr. Toy. Dr. Toy, is good to be here.
It's so funny because I call you now, not Darnell, but
right.
Viewers, Mr. Drewery.
That's right. We're gonna be very nice on this platform. We're gonna be very
We're gonna
nice.
try.
Right. Best we can, you know.
So I just want to jump right into it now. I just, it's so important that our viewers are understanding that this is not just you. You're not like losing it or, oh,
Right.
what's wrong with you and all that kind of stuff. This is really going on. And I'm so curious to see what you're seeing in the community. Like how is this pandemic impacting the people in the community? What do you see?
Sure. Well, first of all, when I first was paying attention to what you were saying, I was glad that you made sure that you spoke that we were focused on the pandemic. We're not talking about the COVID because the pandemic is a result of COVID. So
Mm.
we're not expert. I'm not an expert in COVID by any means,
Mhm.
But pandemic, we're talking about the behaviors and the impact of the pandemic that it can have on human behavior and mental health and all those things. So certainly we see one of the things, of course, we saw an increase, um, especially during this pandemic, in the isolation or being isolated with particular members, an impact of domestic violence, an increase of domestic violence that was happening. Of course, individuals who are more likely to be with their abusers at a longer period of time and more often and more, they're isolated within the space of their homes. And then the isolation is from some of their other friends and families who were kind of their reprieve or their escape from some of the abuse. So that domestic violence was an increase for sure.
Mhm.
That was one thing that we saw. In addition to what I was seeing, I had a teacher say to me, probably a year after the period of time that we had gone into this pandemic, the isolation, one teacher said to me, the question, have you noticed how much more, as we were trying to return back to the normal schedule in schools and stuff, the teacher says, have you noticed how much more the kids they're so like touching. We're constantly saying, why are you touching so much? You're constantly touching each other. And it was like this moment you could tell, and I was trying to explain, you could tell there's number one a need for human touch. There's the need for human touch. I say there's perhaps just behavior off of missing that opportunity for that touch.
Mm.
So and also making sure that they were missing the opportunities of what's the appropriate boundaries on touch. We're not talking about any horrible touch. We're just talking about regular touch. But then they were crossing these boundaries, like it was constantly all the time. But they were missing that opportunity to do that. So that isolation caused me to miss that point of touching. So for them to bring that up, for them to even notice that as a teacher was quite interesting. And we had that conversation.
Very.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. And you think about it, these kids have been locked up, you
Yes.
know, for almost 2 years. And not just when they return from school did they get relief from having any kind of human contact, because we're still saying, don't touch nobody.
Right.
Hugs, don't. Yeah, that's really interesting.
So this need for not being with anybody and being able to touch nobody, that's very hard. And even I saw that happen at the churches when we returned back to the church. Oh, no hugging and no touching. No, we have to sit away from each other. What we were only used to in the church, of course, turn to your neighbor, hug your neighbor, touch this person, greet one another. And that touch, that being isolated from that really had a heavy impact on the human behavior, the need for touch. I mean, that's just behavior on the earth, period. Even animals, they need touch.
Right.
You see animals in the wild, they rub up against each other. That's the first thing, they touch
Mm.
nose and bodies and rubbing. So touch is very important. And to be put in a position to say, don't do what is normal, don't do what is necessary and needed for the brain and the body to connect, that is a hard place to be. That can have a very heavy mental impact on us. And so I guess these are things that we have to and need to pay attention to and understand. So for a teacher to bring that up just stood out to me, and I was like, wow, that was interesting for someone to notice that the ongoing conversation, stop touching, was a very powerful point
Wow.
that I thought stood out to me big time. So.
Definitely. Talk a little bit more about this isolation and what you see. You do a lot of work in the housing complexes and in the community, in the schools. I'm just curious, like, what does isolation do to even adults and
Right.
young people?
Well, of course, isolation it can seem to have this impact of causing loneliness. And when that loneliness kicks in, it may. I even looking at a particular story that I reflect on some stories. Individuals that isolate themselves. We may call them hermits. There was a big story of someone who was considered one of the greatest stories in American stories, which was a hermit. He was considered the North Pond hermit. That's what he's considered. But there was some specific mental health things that were happening from him through his own isolation. And isolation, like isolation that happens within um, prison systems and other institutions, and when people are isolated, the mental impact that it has on an individual. Being taken away from other human connections, the energy humans desire and need other human energy, and so some of those things that begin to play with the mind, I noticed were individuals being impacted by hallucinations and delusions. There was this one particular individual who had heavy isolation, isolated himself from all human contact, friends and families and individuals within the community. His hallucinations was another human being, and he hallucinated a woman in his life. And so he literally he hallucinated this woman in his life who had showed up, at the foot of his bed. He would explain it that this woman would show up at the foot of his bed, but this hallucination was actually pretty deep, because this hallucination was this woman was coming to take him away, just take him away from Earth. She would introduce herself and say, "Are you ready to go?" And so he had this hallucination. He would talk about this woman when he was brought out. His story is pretty long and interesting story. The North, I think it's the North Park or North Pond Hermit. You can look that up, and he has a very interesting story. But when he was arrested, he would talk about this woman in the woods, and so therefore people were thinking he was real. Like, he would talk about her like she was very real, and he would have this conversation with her and talk about the conversations he had with her. And so the reporters thought she was talking about a real person, and to
Yeah.
find out then later that this was a full hallucination that he was having. So even if we want to isolate ourselves or remove ourselves from human contact, our brain still needs human contact. Our brain still, you will even conjure up that need for the human
Yeah.
contact. Yeah.
What do you think that part of "come with me," just by being in isolation, someone showing up in the imagination,
Right.
saying "come with me"? Dig a little deeper in that. That's really interesting.
Well, one of the things that he seemed to explain, which ultimately for the reporter that was following him, on one of the things he seemed to explain to come with me was this woman was a woman of death, and she was trying to tell him to let go, let life go.
Whoa.
It just got too hard. Life was too hard for him to deal with. What he had to do, what life was requiring from him, it was too hard. It was too much.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
this woman was requiring his life, literally giving up his life. So that's why he kept telling her in this period, he would explain, he told her, "No, I'm not ready to go." Because she would say, "Come with me, are you ready to
Mhm,
go?" And
mhm.
so then, to the point that return that came up again, because he told the reporter when they met again a few days later. He told the reporter, he says, he's back out in society and spent some time in jail for what he did and all these different things. And he told the reporter when they spoke again that I'm ready to go back to the woman in the woods, and this time I'm telling her yes. And then at this point, to the reporter, the reporter thought this guy is now suicidal. He
Suicidal.
was suicidal at this point, so because
Wow.
he was ready to give in to the woman in the woods, and that was such a powerful point.
Right.
So, and these hallucinations can be, these hallucinations and delusions. Individuals can start having hallucinations or delusions with individuals that they have connections with outside of their regular day to day stuff.
Yeah. So this lines up with what we're seeing in in research and reports, and there's that
Right.
not that much research because the pandemic is only, you know, a year and some change, almost 2 years long. But
Sure.
what the research is saying is depression and anxiety and suicidal ideations along with plans are at its highest rate, you know.
Absolutely.
And you talked about the violence as well. Just to read a couple stats. So anxiety, 42%, disruptive behavior, 44%, depression, 53%, along with suicidal ideation. So we got sleep problems, irritability, anxiety, disruptive behavior, all that stuff. It has increased and it's heightened along with the violence. So you
Right.
mentioned the domestic violence, and I've been, you know, seeing that so much in my line of work, and being on the board of Women's Center and Shelter. I'm seeing just an increase in domestic violence. What have you been encountering in the community as far as violence and domestic violence, and just seeing that that intensity in the community?
Yeah, yeah. You know, we certainly see ourselves. I mean, you know, the news is constantly reporting news, all this news that's coming out, the different violence. And again, I think it has, you know, going back to the other statement I was making, it just has a lot of showing that we're having a hard time learning even how to engage with individuals. What is the appropriate way to engage? What is the appropriate way to behave with one another? You know, and so when we don't have that appropriateness in check and intact, then we can find ourselves turning more internally. So we're seeking internal direction and internal. And so internally, if I'm internally saying do this, this, and this, I'm just seeking counsel from internally, you
Hmm.
know, but I'm not seeking any external counsel. And therefore, without that external counsel, because sometimes we absolutely need external counsel, because our internal counsel will probably tell us to do something that external counsel might say do different,
Right.
you know.
We don't all times know all the answers, and we do whatever we
Absolutely, we
feel.
do whatever we're being told to do,
Yeah,
and we'll
yeah.
go after that. Yeah,
We go back to those primitive responses.
especially right that the primitive, especially if our internal counsel is coming from a very dark or traumatic space.
Yeah.
If our internal counsel is has a traumatic perspective and view of things, and then they're going to just go into the fight, flight, or freeze mode, you
Mhm.
know, and so it's
Mhm.
going to respond through those three responses of fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
Yeah, because my counsel is coming from a traumatic lens.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah,
And we go straight to that primitive response, like you said, fight, flight, or freeze, and we just do whatever, you know, we're feeling. But
right.
I'm wondering though now, why aren't we over this? Like we're back in to work, sorta. We keep coming back and forth. We're masked up. We're back into school. Shouldn't we be over this? Like why we still hanging
You know
out?
what it would be so it, again and going back to that the human behavior change is hard. It's hard for us to change. We have been in a world where we were able to touch and do what we do and make our decisions and all those things, and now someone is making or something is making the decision for us. It is hard to say. It's almost like being imprisoned, that you just don't have any decisions to make. You don't have any personal decision that you can make all by yourself. So
Hmm.
you lose all self-control. You're controlled, and so someone in prison would tell you they certainly don't tell, they don't certainly don't get to say when to go to bed, when to get up, when to walk around, when to go out. And
Mhm.
and so that's what just feels like a very imprisoned um space, having to be mandated. I just looking at that whole language of mandate, when we're mandated, you know and so if, for normally, I don't mind putting something over my face. When it was winter, we didn't mind putting a scarf or something around our face because we were just protecting ourselves from the cold. But now when you mandate me to do it, that just feels very different.
Yeah.
It is just that human thing to be have to be held to being mandated. It's that fight, flight, or freeze thing
Yeah.
again.
It's
You
that
know,
fight response, right? Like
it's
you're
that
not gonna
fight
tell me what
response.
to do.
Is
But
is
we're
such a
seeing all kind of reactions about this. At this point,
Right.
in almost 2 years, you see people refusing to wear the mask. They're just tired of it.
Yeah.
You see people that said, I'm not going back to work. I'm not working. I'm going to stay in the house. You see people too scared because now Omicron and
Yep.
Rockacron and whatever else,
All the variants that you can name. Yeah, every variant that want to come out. Yeah.
Triceraton. I'm just like, what's going up next?
What's next? Right,
I'm so
right.
tired of it.
Yeah. And that's that is hard part about the human behavior is a very interesting thing. I think they need to look at. I think possibly because this isolation, this pandemic is a lot heaviness of mandation and isolation. I think they could look at some of the behaviors of individuals who have been in that position, locked down, isolated, and mandated in that position, to see how has that impacted individuals mentally, because it's going to have the same impact of individuals who are not physically locked down, but we're being mentally locked down, emotionally, psychologically locked down.
Yeah, even if we're free to move about, like we're free to go to
We're free
work.
to move about, but we're still locked in. Yeah,
It
yeah.
ain't the same. And the pandemic has left a trauma trail. It's some residue there.
It's a residue. It's a heavy
We didn't
residue.
just come on out of it and, at the end of the whiz, can you feel a brand new day? We
Right,
just
right.
shed our clothes. That's not what happened. We're still in it. We're still being impacted by the news. We're still hearing stuff. So it's like, how can we heal if that residue remains? Like the pandemic won't go away. How are we supposed to heal from this?
Yeah, and the thing is, you got to find what can be your next, what could be your next norm. What's going to be normal now? Because how do I move forward if I cannot do that? Because even for like, as far as my wife and Arlana and I, we do events, but we cannot do events. We cannot physically do events. So it's kind of like, what can we do to still support young people, to still engage with young people as we want to, because we desire to engage with them, support them, so that we can encourage them and empower them to become the powerful and excellent people that they are. But we cannot do that physically. So we have to say, what is the new way to do this? What is the new?
That's good. That's good, because we keep trying to go back to, well, who was the old toy? Who was the
Yeah,
old nail? What did I used to do? I just want everything to be exactly the way it was. I'm tired of these
yeah.
masks. But if we fix our brains on this is a new normal and
This is the new
determine what
norm.
that is, you know, that then lowers the expectations that everything's going to be
Yeah.
back the way it was. This is a new normal. That's good
Yeah,
advice.
this is the new norm. Yeah, because it's just not going to be the way it was. Just
Mm,
not. It's just not. It's not going to be the way it was physically, emotionally, legally, even legally. We even have this on a legal scale that people are literally getting arrested, losing jobs and things because they're not following the pandemic or the procedures of the new way of doing things. This is how we're doing it now.
mhm,
So, and
mhm.
until we lock ourselves into saying this is how it's being done, it is a hard fight. Change is not easy. There's so many books and there's so many psychologists and writers and individuals who talk about change. I always think of one of the things that jump out to me, like who moved my cheese. That's a book on change. But yeah, so there's so many writings. So I would think trying to figure out what might be some things that can help me figure out ways to change. You just got to change. You can't do it that way no more.
So give us some tips before you go. Like what are some things that you share with the folks you work with in the community and adults?
Well, I tell individuals figure out what strategy and tools that works for you. Is it prayer? Is it a religious practice? I just said the other day, I said individuals need to stop telling people or questioning people of their religious practice and beliefs. Stop or questioning people of their customary practices every day. Don't question, why do you do yoga? Why do you do that? Let them do that. Let them dive deep into it. Let them learn everything they can, because that might be the very thing that's helping them from snapping. That might be the one thing that's keeping them on task and keeping them on
Right.
track, because, and I said this myself. I said, because, I had someone ask me, why do you follow Christ? And I said, well, you don't know who I would be if I did. So be careful of questioning what people are doing, because there's a lot of people who are ascribing to and prescribing to different strategies and tools and techniques that's working for them every single day. And
Yeah.
imagine if they wasn't using it. Imagine if that tool or strategy was not in their life. They would just be adding to the chaos and the destruction and the misery of this world. So the individuals who are being destructive and chaotic in this world and being, creating misery to the world, those are individuals who are not ascribing to or prescribing to any type of tools and techniques and strategies. So whether it's counseling, find a professional who knows some of this stuff. Again, anything that you consider is outside counsel, or anything that you consider is outside help for you, reach out to that, figure it out, because sometimes this internal counsel is not, there are times that you do have to encourage yourself, but sometimes internal counsel is not the best counsel, especially if you are a traumatized and hurt person,
That's
and
good.
so you just got to seek that help, whatever that help is, and and figure out what works for you and do that, whether it's exercise, yoga, counseling, therapy, all of those things. I would say yes, do all of that.
That's such good advice. Thank you so much, Darnell. I love it, because you know what? Running 5 miles is not my tool. That ain't gonna work for me. But it works for my girl over there. So run on, sis.
Run on. Yes,
and I'm
run
a big
on. Don't question people's tools. Just let them do it. Just support them if you can. Yep.
Don't yuck my yum.
There you go. There you go. I agree. Totally agree.
Well, I thank you so much for being here. I'm going to have you back. There's just so many subjects we could talk about, so much wisdom in this one man. Thank you so much. Listen, stay tuned, y'all. I'm about to give you some of my tips. I'm calling them Toys 10 Tips on Surviving Through the Pandemic with Your Brain Still Intact. I'm also going to post them on the Facebook page. And so that's Healing Overflow, the Facebook page. So thank you so much, Darnell. And then I'm going to go ahead and share my tips. So
thank you for having me. Good job.
Being here. All right, man. Take care.
Keep up the great work.
Man, wasn't that insightful and inspirational? Every time I talk to him, I just get a little something new. So I'm so grateful for him being on the show. All right, let me share my Toys 10 tips. First, find your people. Getting through this pandemic that seems to never go away, you got to keep your brain intact. So keeping my brain intact includes finding my people. Gather your tribe, let them support and love on you when you don't have the strength to do it yourself. It's okay. We're supposed to have people around us. Like our guest said today, we need people, we need touch, we need folks around us to uplift us and give us that strength. Number 2, get an outlet. Music, exercise, baking, it doesn't matter. Find your thing, find your tool that releases stress, and just do it till you're satisfied, as the song says. Number 3, give yourself grace. You're going through almost 2-year pandemic. Have you ever done this before? Have you ever gone through a pandemic? No, you haven't. So give yourself some grace. Don't come down on yourself and criticize yourself. I should be over this. I should be better. Why am I feeling like this? You know what? You didn't go through this ever before. So give yourself a break. Okay. Number 4, incorporate movement. Take time to move around. This releases the tension and anxiety and the stress in your body and helps you to refocus. Get moving. You don't have to do Shaun T's, exercise, kill yourself type of exercise. You could take a walk, or you can move around in your living room. Just get moving and stay moving. Stay hydrated. Drink your water. Look, y'all, I drink a lot of water. Okay. It's good for you, and your body and your brain need it to thrive. Number 6, eat right. Y'all know what I mean. Eat right. Okay. Number 7, get enough sleep. 7 to 9 hours a night is recommended by experts. I know you gasp, but you got to get enough sleep. Get off your phone, get off the computer, go to bed. All right. Number 8, keep a list of daily tasks and check them off as you accomplish it. This makes you feel like, I have a sense of accomplishment and organization, and I feel good that I got things done for the day. Number 9, take mini breaks throughout the day. 5 to 10-minute breaks every hour can help you stay refreshed and avoid screen fatigue or just avoid fatigue, period, through the day. Number 10, seek professional help sooner rather than later. Don't use that internal self to give you, advice all the time. You don't always have all the wisdom and all the knowledge. That's why we have wise ones. That's why we have healers in our community. Go and seek wise counsel and get some answers for yourself and get some relief. Thank y'all. Bless y'all. Love y'all. And I appreciate you listening out today. Bye.